You heard my open. American cities continue to burn right before our eyes, but not a word about it from Bunker Biden. My next guest knows a thing or two about fighting violence and crime in a major city. President Trump's personal attorney hosted the podcast Rudy Giuliani's Common Sense, and the former mayor of New York City, Rudy Giuliani, joins me now. All right, Mr. Mayor, thanks so much for being with us this evening. You heard I'm sure, pretty much most of the Democrat convention and certainly Biden's speech, his acceptance speech. What did you think of the fact that they literally ignored the violence that's going on our city streets?
Well, I thought it spoke volumes about what their philosophy is, which is a pro-criminal, anti-police philosophy that's been that way for quite some time now. I mean, Joe Biden in the speech, with reference to something else, used the words, silence is assent. Now, I'm not sure Joe really knows what that means. He probably read it. But let's now explain to him what it means. It means when you don't speak out about something horrendous, you're thought to kind of agree with it, or certainly not object to it. Well, since the killing of Mr. Floyd, which was really unfortunate and terrible and unjustified, there have been hundreds of people killed and hundreds of blacks killed, none of which Joe Biden has paid any attention to, nor has Black Lives Matter. The 80-day continuous riot in Portland, he's paid no attention to. The 86. Autonomous city in Seattle, he's paid no attention. The 20 murders a weekend in Chicago, I'm talking about all Democrat cities now, he's paid no attention to. This big party came to a big convention. Their cities are up in flames, and they ignore it. What that says is they have no plan to fix it, which is why they should not be elected. We need someone who has a plan to fix it, and the president does and will very, very quickly, just like he fixed all of the other terrible mistakes made by our worst administration ever, the Obama-Biden administration.
Well, Mr. Mayor, let me cut in right there. I mean, we learned in the law of contracts that silence is acceptance. And, as he says, it's assent. But at the same time, for them to then be of the mind that it's wrong to have guns, and, Joe Biden's going to put Beto O'Rourke in charge of gun policy, and Kamala Harris believes that the Constitution doesn't prevent her from confiscating guns, and people like the McCloskeys are being prosecuted, and the DA in Los Angeles, her husband, is being prosecuted for gun possession when Black Lives Matter protesters came up to their home. I mean, this is not acceptable in a civilized society where people can't defend themselves. So how does America begin to understand what is going on and what we need to do? I mean, when people lie, what does the average voter think?
Well, I think what the average voter should say is, if you take a good look at Seattle, Washington, Portland, Oregon, New York City, Chicago, if you vote for Joe Biden, that's going to be you next year. I don't care if you're a city or a suburb. Right. Because the tendency about crime is when it starts and you don't control it and you enable it, it goes out of control. So in 1968, New York City went to 1,000 murders. It remained that way for 30 years. It's much easier to grow crime than it is to reduce it. I reduce crime more than any mayor in history. I know how hard it is.
You did a fantastic job.
But it really would be foolish for Americans sitting in safe places not to realize this is coming for you if you elect these left-wing, soft on crime, tough on police, unrealistic about how to protect people. Look, we've got about 10 cities in which we have Democrat mayors who don't know how to protect their people or don't want to protect their people because they're too afraid of what Black Lives Matter is going to say to them. Well, that's the perfect recipe for a crime wave that's going to go beyond Democrat cities if we elect a Democrat. And particularly if we elect a weak-minded one like Joe Biden, who, look, he got through the speech by reading it. I'm sure he didn't know what he meant when he said silence is assent. He was not very smart before he became incapacitated. He was always kind of dumb. Now he's clearly cognitively impaired. I have a podcast out right now with two eminent doctors that say it is clear that he has something beyond a mild case of either Alzheimer's or some other form of dementia. They say it's in the in the mild, it's in the mid-range category.
I don't know if we've seen any evidence of that, but we haven't seen any evidence of that. But we certainly would like to.
Well, Judge, I have to tell you, go on my podcast and you'll see plenty of evidence of it, and 2 doctors analyzing it in great detail according to DSM-5. Medical
evidence. Right.
They go through
All right.
the sentence construction, and they just demonstrate the various symptoms under the DSM-5 and come to the conclusion that he is significantly mentally impaired.
Well, whatever conclusion, he's not in a position to protect the cities or even talk about them. Rudy Giuliani, thanks so much for being with us tonight. All right. And Carter Page is here and still ahead tonight. But next, are we in for another full-scale shutdown? We may be if Joe Biden is elected. Dan Bongino joins me next to discuss that and more of what we could